All right, and with that, we're off. Thank you so much. My name is Kathleen Robinette. I'm the Executive Vice President of Governing Magazine, as well as Government Technology, the Center for Digital Government, the Center for Digital Education, and Emergency Management. And I am so happy to be here. First of all, I've never been here. This is one of the cities I've always wanted to visit, so thank you, Mayor, for this great excuse for me to come to your great city, so thank you for that. And really want to welcome you to the Governing's first ever summit on government performance and innovation. So let's give ourselves a big hand for arriving here. Our mission and our passion at Governing is to be a catalyst for change and innovation in the public sector. That is why we are truly excited to be hosting this inaugural event here in Louisville, which I have to practice over and over how to say that correctly, in close partnership with Mayor Greg Fischer and the Mayor's Office of Performance Improvement. So let's give them a big hand. This great city has been on the forefront of government innovation. You know, our Center for Digital Government gives several awards. One of them is the Digital Cities Award. They have placed first place in that. We also have a Best of the Web Award, and they also took first place in that. So they're one of those few cities that have actually taken first place, as well as some of the other innovative initiatives that they have going on here. So we look forward to showcasing many of these accomplishments over the next day and a half. It is a privilege to be joined by some of the nation's foremost leaders and experts on government performance and innovation at this summit. How many of you are here from west of the Mississippi? Let's see who's here. Look at those hands. Okay. East of the Mississippi. And I know we have a whole bunch of local folks here as well, correct? All right. And how many of you read that fabulous magazine called Governing? All right. So, innovation is more than the sum of its parts. It is vision and leadership, ideas and collaboration and coordination at so many levels, and the everyday commitment to continuous improvement. Our information-packed program will help us explore many of these aspects and ideas and hopefully help fuel more progress. Our goal is to extend the impact of this event beyond this space. That's why all of our plenary sessions today and tomorrow will be telecast live on governing.com/City Accelerator. So we have Dr. Paul Taylor here operating everything, so this is telecast live. He said already this network has been shared. There's a fair amount of activity of folks joining us around the country. After the event, we will also be releasing an ebook, which will be a wonderful collection of summit highlights, key takeaways, videos, and other helpful resources. So be sure to share all that information with your networks, followers, and colleagues. And I also encourage you to share via Twitter those great ideas we'll hear about today and tomorrow using hashtag #GovLive. Now with this crowd, I'm sure that hashtag is going to go nuts. In fact, I challenge you because I'd love to see this the most amazing amount of activity ever, and I'm sure it will be. So again, a big thank you to the city for your hospitality and enthusiastic collaboration on this program. Really, it was the city that came to us with this idea for this conference. And we had been thinking about this idea as well, so it's just been a great partnership. Thanks to all of you for taking the time from your busy schedules to join us for this event. And also, thanks to our distinguished panelists and speakers. And please join me in thanking all of our sponsors whose generous support makes this conference possible. Thank you, sponsors. And without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Greg Fischer was elected Louisville's 50th mayor in 2010, building on his commitment to growing jobs and creating a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in the city. Since taking office, Mayor Fischer has pursued 3 top goals: making Louisville a city of lifelong learning, a much healthier city, an even more compassionate community. As a businessman and entrepreneur, he brings a data-driven approach to city government with the goal of making it more efficient and accessible. A champion of performance management and outcomes-focused strategies, and an inspiring leader. Because of this, Governing was proud to name Mayor Fischer a Governing Public Official of the Year in 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mayor Greg Fischer.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome to Louisville. And that is the right way to say it, Louisville. Okay, so you're going to have to practice that while you are here. We are local governments are all represented here with about 500 people in total registration. About 200 from around the country, and then about 300 of our own Metro employee folks here as well. We hold an annual day of celebration and recognition for all of our work in improvement and innovation. So you'll be seeing some of those themes run through this event as well. So welcome to our own Metro employees here. I think what binds us here together is a shared belief that at every level of government, people really deserve high performance and constantly improving and innovative leadership and results, right? None of this is any good at all if we're not getting results. So since my team and I entered office, we started right in January in 2011, we've been focused on creating a culture of continuous improvement and innovation in city government. I come from the private sector. As I frequently say, I'm just a business person or entrepreneur that happens to be mayor. So I've went through 4 transformations, if you will, of taking organizations to a high performance level in the private sector. We said, let's do it in the public sector as well. And people in the public sector respond just as well, if not better, than the private sector. So government is a service business, and it can be designed to delight its customers, just like any business can. And we do this because we believe in government. We're not one of these groups that says we want efficient government, we want smart government. But government plays a very important role in all of our lives. If we're able to put forth the time and effort to improving our results for our citizens, what higher calling can we have? And we all have the same amount of time, so why not take that time to be the best in the world at what we do? That's what we're going to tell you a little bit here during this day and a half. So our work is about delivering what we say ever-improving results, constantly spinning the PDCA wheel, Plan, Do, Check, Act wheel. I say this is not a social experiment, right? It's about results. And that means whether we're working on preventive care with high-volume 911 call centers by putting nurses at senior centers so that they don't have to take an ambulance to an emergency room, or involving citizens in testing air quality and being citizen scientists, and you're going to hear from one of those later today. We're not just making incremental improvements, but what we're trying to do is fundamentally alter both the nature of our relationship with citizens, but more importantly, the level of trust that citizens have with their government as well. As you know, trust in government is questioned from time to time these days, and you don't have to look too far than most of the headlines that come out of Washington, D.C., and just even makes us that are in the business, so to speak, scratch our heads and say, how can you be this dysfunctional? But people at the local level expect a lot more. A recent nationwide poll done by Zogby found that between city, state, or federal government, those polled trusted their city government most to do a good job. And that obviously, many of us are from city government, is the government that's closest to the people. And it wasn't just by a little percentage amount. 38% of people trusted their city or town government, followed by 28% with their state, and then 19% trusted their federal government. So, the belief in the usefulness of government and its various reason for being, why we exist, is on us. And I look at that not just as a sacred trust, but I think it's pretty exciting too. We can really help a lot of people realize their potential. Now, without that trust, we're in trouble. Trust is built from competence, it's built from character, and in this group, I can say it's built from repeatable processes and systems at the same time. Trust to us is the basis for building relationships, and I think those relationships that we develop, that's really the magic in a city, and it's the magic because it drives further citizen engagement and the feeling of ownership that you have in a successful city when our citizens say, the success of this city is on me too. I've got to get involved and not just be a spectator or a cynic or a critic from the couch. And so this is really powerful stuff when it comes alive and you start seeing all these unanticipated things starting to happen in your city because people care and they see that we're on a journey to improved results for our city and more importantly then the better society for all of us that results from that. In Louisville, we go about the work of developing internal excellence in delivering government services around a guiding principle that we have, and that is the belief that the transformation is everyone's job. Okay, and when I say transformation, transformation to high performance, transformation where there's total participation. And in this context, I'm speaking in transformation and total participation for all the folks that work for Metro government. We have in our city about 6,000 direct employees, another 4,000 that are indirect, so about 10,000 people or so are involved with this mission. So the transformation is everybody's job, okay? Now when I say job, it's not the job, unfortunately in some ways that folks think about what a job is. Kind of boring, functional, daily work. But we have a much more exciting and empowering definition of the word job. So everybody's job consists of three parts. The daily work part of a job, which is what most people think about, I'm an accounts payable clerk or something like that, that's daily work. But then the other aspect of job is continuous improvement. How can you be the best in the world at what you do? And the third part of the job is breakthrough work or innovation work. Those times when you get a whack on the side of the head and you can have significantly improved results for your job. So when it comes to being part of the transformation, nobody can say, that's not my job. And I'm sure we hear that from time to time. If the job encompasses all of those characteristics, it's everybody's job. So this framework of the job of daily work, continuous improvement, and breakthrough work, innovation, is evident in the structure of this summit as well. So on the agenda, you can see the breakout sessions are all organized around the three parts of this job. And everybody puts a percentage of their time in those three buckets. The higher up you are in the organizational chart, the more amount of time you should be spending on innovation and continuous improvement. But everybody should be focused on this. If you're part of our Public Works Department, you might be spending 90% of your time on daily work and 8% on continuous improvement, but you also have opportunity to contribute to innovation and breakthrough from time to time throughout the year as well. Now, if you don't have the chief executive in your cities and your states driving improvement and innovation, your efforts are going to be limited, frankly, because it has to be clear that the chief executive and the leadership team are driving change and the central values for the transformation to take place. The processes for delivering excellence in the workplace must be explicitly designed so people share assumptions about how we're going to improve and all the tools that are necessary. So for us, we start with our planning process, like many people have, but it's quite robust, and all this is on the web for you to see. So we start with the planning process. Then it's our teaming process. How do we work and organize in teams together to achieve our planning process? The use of our LewisStat performance improvement system that we created. It's a combination of stat-based programs that we see in government quite a bit, but in the private sector improvement techniques like Lean, Six Sigma, and project management. Then the innovation techniques are super important as part of this journey as well. And then, of course, the training. we provide to accelerate our internal capacity to guide our good work. You know, a lot of people say to me, it really must be difficult to have government employees embrace change. And I said, that has not been my experience at all. What we found here is that people were underinvested in. They did not receive a lot of training other than just functional training, but they didn't receive training to kind of develop their human capacity in a broader sense, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. So the response from our employees at Louisville Metro to this journey we're on has been on par, if not above, any private sector mission that I've received. So it's about believing in your people, and you have to invest in them. And leadership has got to drive the change process as well. The transformation is everybody's job, but leadership has got to be at the top. And we have to recognize when we go through these transformations, the 262 process is taking place. And by 262, I mean whether it's a big transformation or a small change, 20% of the people are going to stand up and cheer and say, finally, they get it. 20% of the people are going to say, let's wait that idiot out until he loses the next election. And then 60% of the people are in the middle just saying, which way are we going to go here? So it's the job of leadership to direct them toward goodness and light and away from evil and darkness. And as you start seeing the results and sharing the successes like we are here today, people say, wow, this works. I better get on board. And soon that 60% in the middle starts moving to the 30% good, 40% good. And then as you get toward that, everybody says, boy, we got to get on. Resources like personnel, training, education, promotion, and then we have to pull and amplify those to achieve our goals and then build belief in the goals and the work system results. This stuff really does produce a better workplace and a better city. And then successes have got to be diffused so people can see that, and then accomplishments have got to be recognized to encourage further good work. And you'll see some examples of that throughout this conference. So this conference was designed to illustrate all of those principles. So I encourage everybody, when you're here today learning about the good stuff we're all going to be talking about, also observe how the conference was put together and ask yourself, how could you take something like this home to your cities to accelerate further change as well? We pride ourselves on performance improvement in the city. In fact, I'm going to brag a little bit here. Our Office for Performance Improvement just received the American Society for Public Administration's Center for Accountability and Performance Organizational Leadership Award. Good job to them. Louisville's not really in the South. We're not in the Midwest. We kind of have an identity crisis here, so we just say we're Louisville, okay? But we pride ourselves on hospitality and compassion here as well. So in addition to learning a lot, I hope that you're going to experience a lot of great hospitality. Be sure to take in some of our local food. National Geographic yesterday named us the top city in the world for local food, which we really appreciate that. We've got a really strong locavore movement here. And then bourbon is a local food group in Kentucky as well. In fact, 95% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky, and the other 5% is counterfeit. So don't drink anything but Kentucky bourbon. I want to thank governing, Dennis and the team, for all y'all do to spread best practices across the public sector, but especially for co-hosting this first event here today. Let's give a round of applause to Governing Magazine, eRepublic. I also want to thank our Office for Performance Improvement and their dynamic leader, Teresa Reno Weber. When I said, hey, how about if we have a conference on innovation and continuous improvement? She's like, yeah, let's roll. How are we going to make this happen? So thank you, Teresa, for stepping up and pulling this event together with governing. There's a couple other of our key partners here I want to thank. I want to thank Katie Duda with Bloomberg Philanthropies as well. They've been a critical partner with us on our journey of innovation. The Brookings Institute has been invaluable. The Arnold Foundation, Results for America, and Citi Foundation for their critical support, not just for us, but for many, many cities in this room. So thank you to all of y'all for contributing to a better city and better cities around the country. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker here this afternoon, and we all know him by name, if not in person, and that is Aaron Renn. Aaron is a senior fellow for the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research and a contributing editor at its quarterly City Journal. Aaron comes by his love of cities. Honestly, you can see that in his writing. He grew up in a small town just up the Ohio River, which is about a quarter of a mile that way from here, Laconia, Indiana. And his desire to understand what makes cities work has been a great guide for all of us. He has contributed his insights into basically every newspaper or magazine that covers urban issues. Please join me in welcoming Aaron Renn.
Thank you all, and thank you for that introduction, Mayor. It's really a special privilege for me to be introduced here today by the mayor of Louisville, because Louisville is really my hometown. I grew up right across the river in southern Indiana. In fact, when my mother heard I was going to be here talking at this event, she asked if she could come, and since you always say yes to your mother, my mom came here, so hi, Mom. I was born in the city of Louisville, grew up across the river in the small town of Laconia. I love cities like only someone from a town of 29 people can. But we were part of the Louisville metro area. We were one of those rogue counties that used to change our clocks back before Indiana got with the program and adopted daylight savings time. I had family in the South then and spent a lot of time growing up stomping around out by Iroquois Park. And I've always considered the Louisville area home. And growing up here, the mayor of Louisville was always some big shot you'd just see on TV or in the newspaper, but you never really thought you'd actually get to meet that guy, right? And so to be introduced at a big-time conference like this by the mayor of the city is really a special honor for a kid that grew up here and makes me very thankful for all the opportunities that this country and this community have given me. Our conference theme today is innovation. I want to hit 3 points on that. One, why is innovation an imperative today? Two, what are the real barriers to innovation? Because they're not necessarily what you might think. And then third, how can we create an environment in which innovation can flourish? So first, why is innovation so important today? Well, we live in an increasingly complex, competitive, interconnected, globalized world, right? The 21st century is just vastly different than the 20th century. So we need to be able to take our communities, which were designed for yesterday's realities, and evolve them to handle today and tomorrow's reality, right? And I could give an entire talk on just the challenges posed by the future, but I just want to highlight a few of the huge things we have to deal with. One is globalization, which has fundamentally transformed our world, right? Globalization has created these gleaming cities like London, Shanghai, Singapore, but it has also unleashed brutal competition on lower skilled workers who too often remain mired in Tom Friedman's flat world economy. And the result is what we see today, right? Increasing income inequality, stagnation in middle-class living standards, and kind of a breakdown in the engine of upward social mobility. It's a huge problem. But beyond just globalization, we also have the challenges posed by technology, opportunities, but also challenges. And I think we lose track of just how fast and how much technology has changed. 10 years ago, this didn't exist, right? Today, we can't even imagine life without it. Researchers at both MIT and Oxford have estimated that up to half of all the jobs in the United States could go away because of technology-driven innovations, right? You probably read that over the holidays, Amazon was installing all these smart robots right in their distribution centers. They want to deliver packages by drone, right? It's not hard to imagine that in the future, an Amazon warehouse that today employs 1,000 people, tomorrow might operate much more like a lights-out data center with only a handful of caretaker employees, right? We also have huge demographic changes, aging populations that are really affecting budgets, particularly in Europe. We have that challenge here, obviously. But what's really transforming America is increasing diversity. This country is projected to be a majority-minority country by 2043. And in a lot of places like California, that's already here. Right? And for a region of the country that has historically been less diverse, that's an adjustment we have to go through. As the mayor alluded to, we have complete gridlock in Washington. And even if we didn't, we have $18 trillion in national debt, which is a number that no one can possibly comprehend what it means. But I was just reading this morning a stat that the sum total of all the commercial real estate in the United States is only worth $15 trillion. We ain't never going to pay that off. So there's just no money, right? And as Bruce Katz at the Brookings Institution likes to say of states and localities expecting federal help, the cavalry is not coming, right? We're on our own. We face tremendous geopolitical instability, environmental challenges. All of these things individually are huge challenges. Put them together and it adds up to a degree of difficulty high environment in which we have to operate. So innovation is imperative for us to be able to evolve and adapt our communities to thrive in this environment. So how do we do that? First, why is that hard? My guess is this is not the first innovation event you've been to, right? We've all been to some innovation kind of rodeos before. What's the one thing they all have in common? Innovative ideas, right? The focus is about how do we get more innovative ideas. In fact, there's usually some kind of a competition about how we get more innovative ideas. I won one time. So I love that, and I believe innovative ideas are critical. But I'd argue that the real barrier to innovation is not a lack of ideas, but rather something that I call the tyranny of the org chart. And I want to illustrate that by talking a little bit about my own career. I spent most of my professional career working for a large global consultancy. And I always thought our clients hired us because we were really smart guys and gals, right? We hired the best people, we had the best frameworks, the best techniques, we worked our butts off, our PowerPoints were the best, right? We had it. We were good, and that's why people hired us. Then I took an internal position in my own company. And at first, I was really excited about this because I'm like, I'm going to get to bring the same innovations that we brought to our client, that same sort of approach to my own company is going to be amazing. Well, let's just say it didn't quite work out that way, right? When I was at a client site, man, the clients were very eager to hear what we had to say and very ready to take action in many cases. Whereas internally, they weren't nearly so interested in what we had to say, and too often the things we wanted to do ended up sinking into a bureaucratic quagmire, right? And, I don't want to say it was a disaster. My internal department did great work. I was very proud of what we accomplished, but it was just a lot harder than it should have been. And, I think to say candidly, I did not achieve the aspirations that I'd laid out for myself when I first took that role. And I don't think that's uncommon. Talk to anyone who has taken an internal role after being an aligned consultant. They'll tell you their own firm was the toughest client they ever had, probably followed by a bunch of salty language, right? And reflecting on that experience, that's when I realized why it is that people really hire consultants. You see, because when you're in a staff position or you occupy a known status inside of a social structure, everything that you say or do is seen through the lens of the box that you occupy on the org chart. right? So if someone comes up with an innovative idea, but that person is a junior analyst or a middle manager, that idea is going to have a hard time getting a hearing, much less be implemented, right? Because that person probably doesn't have access to someone who can actually implement the idea. The layers above them are probably threatened by new ideas or find their own position threatened by a hotshot up-and-coming, young innovator. And if they're not, it's a sure bet somebody in the organization is, right? All new ideas have haters. And if you're down in the bowels of an organization, chances are you don't have the juice to just punch through that, right? Contrast that with a consultant. Consultants exist completely outside of the org chart, right? They can go anywhere and talk to anyone. You probably noticed consultants tend to have very nebulous titles like senior consultant or partner that really make it hard to figure out where they stand in their own organization. And that's really to allow them to post up with clients that are a lot more senior in them in reality, right? When I was a partner in my firm, that title allowed me and people like me to talk to C-level executives at Fortune 500s as companies, as peers, even though in a sense we were really just middle management in our own firm, right? And so to borrow a phrase, consultants stand behind a veil of ignorance about their true status that lets them get around this tyranny of the org chart. In fact, I'd argue that bypassing org chart blockage is really the primary function of a consultant. Right? I don't think it's any mystery that a lot of times consultants just go in, talk to people at junior levels of the organization, write up their findings, present it to the executives, and they think it's gold, right? And that's why middle management particularly despises consultants. And I don't, we've been telling their bosses the same thing they've been telling their bosses, only when we tell them they listen. And so, it's true, it's what happens. I don't even think the executives who hire consultants really fully understand this a lot of times because they always push back on that upfront analysis work. It's like, okay, don't look at my watch and tell me what time it is, if you've ever heard that one. But their own people a lot of times have been pointing to the watch, but they're not looking at the hands. They're not looking at the hands, right? And so let's translate all this into the civic space, and what we end up with is that old saying that an expert is someone from out of town, right? And I see so much innovation and innovation potential in communities, but a lot of those innovative ideas are just not happening because the people who have them, aren't players in that community. They don't have the clout to get things done or put it on the agenda of decision makers, right? So not only do you lose so often the ability to take advantage of those great innovative ideas, the people who have those ideas feel so disrespected, they often leave. Then they achieve great success somewhere else. And then you're like, well, how did that happen? Right? How did that happen? And I want to illustrate this. I want to tell a story about a friend. And I'm going to strip out most of the identifying details to protect the guilty. But I can assure you of two things. One, this is a real person. And two, it's not me. It's an actual bona fide friend. He was born and raised in a Midwest city, went to school there, got a planning degree, and was hired at a national planning engineering firm in Atlanta. Okay, big national firm. He went down there, was having a great career, but he just loved his hometown. So he started a website dedicated to his hometown that was really trying to put it on the map. And this was a 100% positive site. He was completely aligned with the political structure at the time. He's not one of those bloggers we all know so well, right? Writing all these angry screeds. And it just exploded and literally got more national and global recognition than the stuff the Chamber of Commerce was doing, trying to put their city on the map. And so this guy wants to take it to the next level. He's like, I want to move back home and be a part of the good things that are happening in my town. Okay? And so he decides to start looking for a job in his city. There's just one problem. Nobody would hire him. Could not find a job. So here's a guy, he's the exact millennial every city professes to be obsessed over, right? That's spending millions and millions of dollars. We're trying to lure all these millennials, right? He's 25, so you don't need to pull out a CEO chair for him or pay him big bucks. He's motivated. He's got a legit credentialed skill and a tier 1 firm on his resume and is a proven innovator and successful person in the innovation space who's literally attracting city attention for his Midwestern city in places like London. Nobody hired him. So while this is going on, unsolicited, the largest planning engineering firm in the United States headhunts him to Chicago. So he moved to Chicago, does good work there. Then they send him on an expat assignment to Seoul, South Korea, where, among other things, he's working on Songdo City, which, if you're not familiar with it, is the single highest profile smart city implementation on planet Earth. But he's not good enough for his hometown. And this is so common, it's ridiculous. You probably knew that Mark Andreessen, famously invented the modern web browser in Illinois, and they ran him out of town on a rail. He went out to Silicon Valley, started Netscape, and launched the dot-com revolution, right? And so this is not even a new phenomenon. This has been going on a long time. In fact, about 2,000 years ago, this happened to a fellow who observed of the event that a prophet is not without honor, except in his hometown. And isn't that just Joe the carpenter's kid? Who does he think he is? I think that who does he think he is really sums it up, right? Because in your hometown, they may not know who you are, but they know who you aren't, right? And that's one of the boys. And so, sticking with the biblical analogies here for a minute, in the parable of the sower, there's a farmer scattering seeds, right? And some of these seeds land on the rocks and the birds come and eat them. And some land over here in the weeds and they get choked out. And some land in the good soil and they raise a mighty crop. And when it comes to innovation, we tend to think that our problem is that we don't have enough seeds. Right? We don't have enough innovative ideas in our community. But the truth is, most places have seeds and ideas raining down on them all the time. But most of them are landing in the rocks or in the weeds. Right? We don't have a seed problem, we have a soil problem. Right? And this is so endemic to every organization and community. I think it's really a problem of the human condition. When I travel around, I get pinged by people. Hey, I see you on Twitter, I want us to stick together. I meet these young people who have amazing ideas. But I wonder how many of those ideas will ultimately get a hearing. And I suspect very few. So if you want innovation to really happen in your town, you got to make a full frontal attack on this tyranny of the org chart. Another factor that particularly impacts public service is, it just adds to the difficulty, is the fact that, it's an inherently political environment, right? It's an inherently political and partisan environment. We've got Team A and we've got Team B, right? And if Team A is in favor of it, Team B is against it. And if Team B tries something new and it doesn't work, Team A is going to eat them alive, right? And so even if you kind of have an all-Democrat city or an all-Republican suburb, believe me, in that state somewhere are some of the other guys that are watching. And so I like the two-party system, right? I'm glad we don't live in a one-party state. But in a sense, it produces an inherently risk-averse environment to try new things. So it takes enormous political courage to innovate and try new things. We have to find within ourselves that courage. And I think about someone like Steve Goldsmith, who's going to talk here tomorrow, former mayor of Indianapolis, deputy mayor of New York. Very excited to hear him. He was a guy who innovated a lot, took tremendous heat in so many circles. But we got to have that type of political courage. And I think this really manifests itself practically in the fact that as we pursue civic improvement in so many places, it's really all about Me Too projects. It's things that have already kind of been the safe, approved thing to do that we just replicate in our town. And we see this in all these city marketing videos, right? If you ever watch how cities market themselves through videos, they're all basically the same, right? It's bike lanes, it's coffee shops, startups, microbreweries, the bearded ones, right? Fashion, roller derby, downtown apartment booms, right? Check, 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 check. They check every box on the list. right? You watch one from another city and you probably laugh at how generic it seems and how pretentious it sounds, right, at trying to make themselves sound great. And then we all turn around and do the same thing in our own town, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to go for what's safe and approved. And I like bike lanes, but those sorts of things are what you might think of as best practices, right? They don't really differentiate you. They're just the new urban ante. They get you a seat at the table so you can play the real cards, but they don't generate a lot of marketplace value. They don't set us apart in the marketplace. So how do we overcome these things and make innovation happen? I think when it comes to the tyranny of the org chart, the mayor nailed it. It is leadership, right? It takes a leadership that is determined to create a culture of innovation, not just for themselves personally, but pushing it down through the organization so that at every layer of that organization is seeing it as their business and know that they're going to be held accountable for creating that culture of innovation where the best ideas, wherever they come from, right? You know, whether it's the person in the corner office or on the DPW truck, those ideas can get it here and be implemented. When it comes to overcoming the conservatism, I want to focus in a little bit more on how we can spin up the receptivity to innovation. Innovation, you know, it needs to be seen not as something we do for its own sake, but in service of answering the question, how do we succeed and win in this 21st century economy, right? If we want to be politically courageous, we have to know what it is we're going to be courageous about, right? How does this play into our success strategy for a city? And again, since most people are Me Too, I say be like the old Apple campaign and think different. And ask what is it about my community that is just plain different from any place else on earth, right? What is it that really makes Louisville such a great city, right? What is it? Because if you spend time here, you'll realize Louisville is extremely different from Nashville. Doesn't mean one's better or worse than the other. They're just different, right? So we have to heed the old saying of the Greek oracle, to know thyself. That's really the first step. And that is challenging because it raises all those questions of identity, right? And the mayor hinted at it. When I was a kid, they were running articles, what's Louisville's identity? And it's not a unique question. You hear it all over this part of the country because places are like, we don't seem to have that easy to put your finger on identity, right? What's the identity of Ohio? Most people in Ohio couldn't even tell you. But I would say, not only does Ohio have an identity, travel around Ohio, and the places within Ohio are very distinct. Go visit Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus. Those are three radically different cities, right? It's instantly apparent, like a cold bucket of water in the face, how different they are. We might not be able to explain what it is that makes them different, but they're extremely different from each other. So we have to kind of go on a little bit of an urban anthropology, archaeology expedition to dig deep, unearth the essence of the place, distill it down into kind of that vial of mojo, if you will, and then we infuse that into everything that we do, and we create the innovations of the new off the reality of the old. And when we do that, you get what I call cultural resonance. And you get something that seems right and is easier to sell and seems less risky, both internally and externally. For example, right here in Louisville, we've seen this embrace of bourbon, right, as a food group. Does Louisville have microbreweries? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But from what I've seen, right, it's bourbon that gets the top billing here, right? So, in a sense, that's doing something new, different, and innovative, right? But when everybody else says beer and Louisville says bourbon, right, people think about that for a minute and they go, well, yeah, of course, right? This is Kentucky. It makes sense. You can sell it, right? Not only that, you can sell it to the world, too. They'll actually believe it. And I know Mayor Dean from Nashville's here. I love Nashville. One of my favorite cities. I get down there once a year if I can. And it may be my favorite small city in terms of how they sell themselves to the marketplace, right? What's the first thing you think of when you think of Nashville? Right? Country music, right? Well, it's probably no surprise to you if I tell you that country music is a bit, shall we say, déclassé in Manhattan and San Francisco, right? I don't hear a lot of the urban sophisticates with their favorite country mix on their iPod, but you talk to Nashville, they don't go like, well, gosh, if we want to be taken seriously on the Upper West Side, we better ditch that country stuff and start talking about our artisanal chocolate scene and our cupcake shops, right? I mean, I'm sure they got that in Nashville, right? But no, country music is still, front and center in how they sell themselves, right? It's still, a big part of that city's identity. But here's the key. It's not your granddad's AM radio country, right? I mean, so they honor that music and those people. They're like, yes, that is our heritage. In fact, I would say they see themselves as in continuity with that past, but that's not what they're doing today, right? They've evolved it. Today it's more glitzy, it's more slick, it's more media savvy. As I like to say, think Hollywood, not hee-haw, right? Carrie Underwood, not Minnie Pearl, right? And it's working beautifully, right? They're getting tons of great press. New York Times, everybody talking about how hot they are. They've even got their own TV show about their city, one that, unlike Portlandia, is actually on a broadcast network. So put that in Portland's pipe and smoke it. They built the new right off the reality of the old. And I believe Mayor Reed from Atlanta is going to be here today, too. That all my favorite urban marketing stories are here. A few decades back, Atlanta didn't say, gosh, man, the South sucks. If we expect anybody to ever want to invest here, we better somehow convince them we're not in the South. No, they said, well, maybe we could take the South and say, why can't we show the world what the South can be if we take who we are and position it for this new reality that we live in? Why can't we be the capital of an emerging new South, right? And while they did that, they also took, a very serious inventory of themselves and said, maybe there are some things that do need to go. Maybe there are some things that do need to change here, like racism, for example. And they said, we need to set out to be, the city too busy to hate. And, I think one thing that they were able to do is go beyond kind of the mandatory corporate diversity training style platitudes about inclusion and this and that. And they said, let's forget all that stuff. How can we make our Black community central to the growth strategy that we have as a city and really an engine propelling our whole region forward? And I don't think it's any surprise that as Atlanta became the premier city for Blacks in America, it also became pretty darn good for white people and was really one of the great late 20th century economic success stories, right? But they built the new out of the reality of the old. So understand your identity and innovate off what's authentic. In this community, we need to be a world-class Louisville, not have world-class in Louisville, right? Those are two very different things. Don't try to beat other communities at their game. Try to make them beat you at yours. A great city, like a great wine, has to express its terroir. And that is the soil in which innovation can take root and flourish. Thank you. You don't have to ask any questions. Oh, we got one right there, behind you there.
This is working. Hi, my name is Rene Cassiano, and I'm from the city of South Bend. I have a quick question. You mentioned kind of getting a bit of an identity of your city and trying to work with that. Now, I know that everybody kind of has a way to do that on their own, but are there any strategies or kind of any tips that you have to kind of get the essence of a certain place?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think it's very difficult as an insider to do it because when we kind of grow up in a place, so much of the way things are there are just like the air we breathe, right? We don't even like fully appreciate them. So I think to some extent it's almost like getting an old long-form journalist to come in and really like maybe even live there for a couple months. Somebody that's an outsider who really can embrace your community and find out things about it maybe you didn't even know. And I'll give you an example. There's a program up in Indianapolis where they brought in artists from out of town to do residencies. It's like, we'll set you up, with some housing and some studio space and a stipend. You just come here and hang out and leave us a project to remember you by. And they brought in this couple of artists from Brooklyn who discovered somehow it was a duo who included someone of Latin American heritage, who was a Spanish speaker, and African American, that had this very interdisciplinary approach. They discovered that the city plan of Tijuana, Mexico, was based on the plan of Indianapolis. Nobody had a clue, even in Indianapolis, that was true, right? And so even just in historical research, so I think bringing in some people from the outside should just breathe it in and be willing to, hopefully, I think artists are good because they're generally willing to speak the truth, which can be difficult. And so I think that, that sort of takes a little bit of an outsider's perspective and a real willingness to listen and have some of your own assumptions challenged.
All right. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.